Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, I Will Wait in Line. Over the past few years, I've gone frequently to this one restaurant that is across the street from my workplace. It was convenient, not only for me and others that work with me but for other businesses as well. It gives people a nice option for a hot meal to eat there or something to go. Now for some reason, they decided to change how they want orders to be done. Previously you lined up where they made the meal, order it there, go to the register and pay for the order. They first implemented a system that you had to walk in a certain path from where the meal was and ushered towards the cashier. Then they changed it and you were given a number before you go and sit down. Then you were given a chip with a said number on it. This caused some grumblings, but people were okay with this. Lineups were sometimes horribly bad, especially around lunch where you might have dozens waiting in line for food and some just standing around at the grill. Productivity and all that. Now, most recently, they changed the order in how they want the customers to stand. First, you wait in line at the till. You tell the cashier what you want. Then you get your chip and go sit down. Which is fine if you know what you want. If you want to look at the menu, which is still near the grill, you have to go past the cashier and look at it. Doesn't help that they have new burger options, but the text is so small you have to get close to it to read it. And what happens if you want to look at the menu or get near the grill? Someone assumes that you don't understand the new rule and tells you to get in line. In fact, I was looking at the menu when the one cashier, who I'll call Kathy, told me in her best annoyed voice to get in line. I hadn't decided what I wanted at this point. And this was the third time in the last 2 weeks that someone was telling me this. I was annoyed by being told that before I was ready. Cue malicious compliance. I got into the line that had 3 people in it. I didn't get to break for lunch until almost 1 due to reasons. I was still deciding what to eat when it was my turn. Kathy asked, "What do you want?" No idea, still choosing. Awkward silence. Kathy looked at me for a second. By now, a couple of other strangers have lined up. Well, why are you in line? You told me to. You shouldn't if you haven't decided. But you told me that I have to be in line to order. So I did. Now I had figured out what I wanted but thought I pushed the point further. I can tell Kathy was getting more irritated the longer I took, but I wasn't going to stop pushing my point so easily. I kept looking over the menu until finally, Kathy snapped. Get out of line so others can order. Finally, I said, I'll have a cheeseburger. I paid for it, got a chip and sat down. The manager, who I've known for years and helped occasionally, came over and asked what that was all about. I just said that I did what Kathy wanted me to do, and if I wasn't ready when she was, not my issue. The next story is called, No One is Allowed to Leave Early Anymore. So for some context, I work in healthcare. At the moment, I am on-call personnel that has been scheduled in the basic 9 to 5 in an outpatient clinic portion of the hospital. We take both walk-ins and scheduled appointments, seeing as many as 80 to 150 patients in a single day. But typically, we are done an hour early around 4. Currently, my staff team is short 5 people due to high turnovers and people going off to advance their careers. This is something that is not quite uncommon. Because of this, the managers decided to implement 2 new, emergency rules to help with coverage. The first one states that no one could leave early from their shift anymore, regardless if all patients have been completed for the day, as we may be needed elsewhere. Secondly, on some days we must also find our own breaks, which can be entirely dependent on how many people called out for the day. Because we are so short-staffed, I have been unable to collect my full 1-hour break as the shortage is leaving me to run the outpatient department by myself on most days. Thankfully, this had worked to my advantage, and for the last 2 months, I have been getting a lot of overtime and extra pay for missing breaks. The benefit of being on-call personnel at my hospital is that we get a 20% higher salary instead of benefits, so I am now making an upwards of an extra $300 a week. As you can imagine, management began to recognize the pattern and called me into the office last week to see why I am costing them a fortune in overtime due to missed breaks. It is easy to tell from the start that the managers are not happy with this, even having the notepad ready to write me up. The director immediately pulls out my timesheet with highlights galore. The entire thing looked like my old college textbooks. A few days in particular caught management's eye, though. On the week I made $500 extra for the week. They had pulled camera footage of the back area for 3 shifts where I was finished an hour early and just hung out at my desk until closing, but also claimed on my timesheet that I had not taken a lunch. Before management could explode on me, I requested they pull up the patient schedule for the day, our personnel's schedule for that day, and including the phone records to show that I had called other management to see if I was needed anywhere else. The rest of the conversation went somewhat similar to this: so if you are done an hour early, why didn't you just take your lunch then? Or float to another department? You mean just leave early? And I had called the other departments those days asking if they needed help. No one did, so I stayed where I was because we aren't allowed to leave early. That is correct. We are not allowing staff to do that at this time. If you are not needed anywhere else, you should be taking that time to catch up on paperwork. All the paperwork was done. I had completed orders in our system for the next week. All are time-stamped for proof. Also, our current contract says we cannot take lunch for the last hour of the shift, but the idea of me taking lunch in the last hour and leaving earlier effectively the same. If you would like me to not go over into more overtime, then allowing me to leave early so I can legally acquire a lunch would greatly help you. After the awkward conversation, I was told that was all they needed and would get back to me. After 3 days, management concluded that the rules still need to be properly enforced due to staffing, and therefore I was completely valid in what I had put in my timesheets. To this day, I am still acquiring extra money. I expect to pay off 3 student loans by the end of the year thanks to the extra income. Feels good. The third story is called Devaluing Your House. This is a story of my mother. She has always been incredibly hard-headed, but this sticks out a lot from my teenage years. Once a year she always had us pull everything out of the garage, so we could go through it and clean and reorganize. This particular year, the couple who owned the house across from us was in the process of selling their house. Unhappy with my mother's unsightly driveway covered in boxes soiling their good image, they made a call to the homeowner association. By the time my mother received the letter, the mess had been put away, but they decided to get her on a few other complaints such as the bikes against the side of the house and the patchy gravel. She had 2 weeks to have everything up to standards. Petty and easily frustrated, my mother knew immediately who called. The couple had come over and told her flat out with their renovations they were selling that house for way more than any other house in this neighborhood. And that they would appreciate if she respected that by keeping her property on par. For the next 2 weeks, every box from that garage was in our driveway. The couch and the living room TV came next. This was early summer, so it was perfect weather to sit in your yard in your short shorts and a sports bra. My mum made sure to wave and smile every time they brought someone over for a showing. The final step came at the end of that 2 weeks though. After the yard had been cleaned up and cleared by the homeowner association, my mum went to the local Walmart and bought a for sale sign. She wrote about a quarter of the neighbor's ridiculous asking price on it and finished off with a big sold written across the front and stuck it out in our yard. No clue what they ended up selling their house for, but it sat empty for a while, so I'd assume it was below offer. The last story is called Refuse Me a Break. I recently dropped out of uni and have started working as front of the house at a chain grill while I look for a long-term job. This particular location had a few managerial issues before I joined and is severely understaffed. The new manager was hired at about the same time as I was, and the assistant manager has only been there a few days and has already made a name for herself for just being difficult. The manager had literally been working over 15 hours a day for every day since she started because she was so invested in sorting the pub out, and there was not enough staff available to allow her time off. I wasn't meant to be working on Easter Sunday, but I offered to come in to help out in the evening, partly so that the manager could have a break, and partly so I could have some company as the rest of my house had gone home for the holidays. Obviously, she appreciated that and penciled me in for 6 to 11:30. 11:30 finish is just a number to put on the rota. The unspoken rule is you go home when everything is done, no matter how late. You get paid for the time though, so I'm not bothered. I don't really sleep much and money is money, so it suits me well. Naturally, Easter Sunday was packed, and 2 people called in sick in the morning, so it was hectic all day. When I arrived, it was only me, the assistant manager and a co-worker for the front of the house. My co-worker ran the bar all evening, and I ran plates back and forth, made desserts and dealt with all of the nonsense that comes with working in hospitality, while the assistant manager helped out wherever necessary. Unfortunately, we were busy enough that I only had time to wash plates and cutlery when we ran out of something. Usually, we have a pot washer, but she called in sick. This meant we had a huge pile of plates gradually building up in the kitchen and no time to wash them. I was in charge of cleaning the kitchen that night, and I knew it would be a late one, which was fine. I went to the assistant manager and asked if I could order food and take my break at about 8:30. Where I work, you are legally entitled to 20 minutes break every 6 hours. This is how our conversation went. Hey, do you mind if I take a break now while it's not too busy? No, you're not working long enough to get a break. Get back to work. But me, we're paying you for 5.5 hours. You'll work for 5.5 hours. Fair enough. I went back to work, spent the next few hours cleaning tables and started on the immense pile of washing up. On a usual day, bar cleanup and kitchen cleanup finish at a similar time, but even on a usual day, kitchen cleanup is a 3-man job. So comes 11:30. I wasn't anywhere near done with the washing up. I went to see the assistant manager, who was helping close the bar, and told her I was heading out. I went to get my coat while she checked if I had done the kitchen properly. When I got back, she was waiting for me, quite clearly unhappy with me. "Where do you think you're going? The kitchen is a mess, you're not leaving until it's done." "Sorry, I'm being paid for 5.5 hours, I'm working for 5.5 hours. "What? No, you don't go home until everything is done." I went home. Usually, my co-workers and the chefs would have helped out in the kitchen when they had finished with their stuff, but I let them know what I was doing and they decided to leave it all for her, as she had been on their case as well. Apparently, she was washing dishes until 2:30. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.